for over 1.5 years, I smoked weed every single day. And I was broke, and I had it in my budget. I wanted to quit 10, 20, 30, 40 times. I really, really wanted to, and I kept on messing up. I kept on, setting this intention to quit, but it felt almost like a full-time job. Like I was like just pulled so much towards it. I'd smoke. I wouldn't even enjoy the high anymore. And then when I wanted to quit, I'd be so pulled towards it. Now, you know what? Something I've not even mentioned. This was the worst mental health of my entire life. There's something that goes way deeper than, like eating some junk food. But, some people say like they get paranoid when they smoke weed. That was me. I had about 6 months of smoking where it was just kind of nice. It was chill, or maybe a bit less than that. And there was this one day where I smoked. I went out to like this park with my girlfriend, and we ended up smoking it. And it's interesting. I won't play you the clip, but we ended up recording like this kind of cute like little video of us like pretending to be YouTubers there for like 10 minutes. And like, hey guys, welcome back to our like 0 subscriber special. And we're just kind of like sitting there and everything, laughing, smoking, and talking like as if we're YouTubers. And at the end of the video, you see my girlfriend, this is my ex-girlfriend. You see her kind of get up, and straight away I'm kind of like, I just get instantly scared. And I'm like, wait, sit down, you might fall, you might fall. We're like a solid meter away. You might trip and fall over into the water or something. But like, this was the first part of my paranoia, which might seem insignificant. But then we start walking back to the apartments. And that's when the weirdest dark thoughts start popping into my mind. When I start having a battle in my own mind, and I can't stop thinking weird negative stuff. My life's just awful, and I hate my life. There's literally no point in living. I may as well just kill myself. Wait, what? And I'm literally having this argument in my mind because I've just found it so fucking weird that my brain generated the thought that I may as well just kill myself because of how little I was enjoying life, because I had no purpose. I had no good character traits that I was developing, that I was proud of. I was living like this shell of a life that was purely just that was pulled by pleasure and desire. Not purpose, not mission, not leadership, not development, self-improvement and learning. But just pleasure, Tinder, junk food, sugar, weed, sex, movies and video games. This is all I was spending my time with. There was the gym as well, but like I said, it wasn't really working for me at the time. And I'm saddened to say, to even think back about this, but that moment which I just told you about, where I had that bad high, where I was quite paranoid, that happened about, who knows, 4, 5, 6 months into me smoking weed. And I told you that I smoked weed for about 1.5 years, right? After that day, I never had a good high again. Think about what I've just told you. I told you before that I smoked weed pretty much every single day for 1.5 years. And I'm telling you, this is the truth. From that first moment where I had that first paranoid high, those exact same negative thoughts came to me in every single time that I smoked for the next year straight. Imagine 365 days of that mental turmoil going on inside of your mind. Those dark thoughts where you're questioning ending it all. Every day. And it was so odd because when I would smoke, I'd realize the negative thoughts were coming back in. And this led to this weird feedback, like this loop from hell, where I had negative thoughts about the negative thought, and I had these intrusive thoughts, and it was like this weird, complex psychological problem. And I dealt with that every single day. Since that point, I'll tell you like more of the story in chronological order, but yeah. When I look back to that, I genuinely can't believe that I kept on smoking, but it was a pure addiction. I know some people say you can't be addicted to weed. I personally do think you can, because I didn't enjoy life anymore apart from when I was smoking. But when I'd smoke, it made me paranoid and gave me these dark thoughts where, like I was just doing nothing with my life. Soon this turned into thoughts of entrepreneurship. Here I am in the homeless shelter, which I've mentioned in a bunch of videos. So I worked at nighttime. This is where the homeless guys would knock. They'd literally just like peer their head through there, and the outside of the house would be, let's say you see my cursor, it'd be like way up there, right? That's where they'd group up at like 4 a.m. and they'd disappear for like 1 hour or 2 hours, and then they'd walk back, still in the dark, with 3 bikes, with like some MacBook monitor thing here, with this other like PC or laptops or bags of like random stuff. Like every night they'd go out and rob people in Manchester. And this is where I'd see them poke their heads like, do. Yo, mate, can you open it? I want to get some breakfast. And they'd literally have to walk past me to go there and everything. So it's quite a scary place. I was working at nighttime, right? I'd often work 16-hour shifts from 4 p.m. to 8 a.m. I want you to think about that right now. Really visualize that. Have you ever done that before? From 4 p.m. to 8 a.m. was my shift. And here I am, probably at 1 or 2 or 3 a.m., trying to learn how to code. For all the coders out there, they can probably recognize this site. That word right there says Free Code Camp. Okay, so check radio buttons and checkboxes by default. You can set a checkbox or radio button to be checked. I'm trying to learn how to code in this job that I'm working at, and I've got respect for this version of Hamza who's putting in the work. Now, he was still weak because he'd finished these shifts and he'd come home and the first thing he'd do was smoke, but at least he was starting to, like, become productive and start like working on this. This was around the time that I made this video, which you probably know about, how to build an aesthetic physique. I actually called it How to Build an Attractive Body, and I later on renamed it to Aesthetic Physique. I wonder if aesthetic body, sorry. I wonder if I kept it as attractive body, if it ever would have blown up.
So this literally just means the side of your shoulder. You train this by doing lateral raises with side. So this literally just means the side.
It was at this point when I had thoughts and desires of entrepreneurship, really, really deep desires. And that started to become the priority in my life, but I was still caged by weed. I was working that job that I told you about. Even before that job, I was working full-time in customer service, and maybe one day I'll tell you a story about that. But at this point, I hated my life so much. I had journaled so many pages. It was time to go home. I had lived away from my family for the last 3 years from this point, and especially back then, it's like me and my family, we did not have a good relationship. We had a lot of trauma growing up, and even around that time, there was a lot of like abuse and shouts and fights and everything. So if you imagine, if you had moved out, would you want to move back into that dynamic? Probably not, especially when, you're an adult, you've got a gamer girlfriend that you live with, that you smoke weed with and fuck every single day. That stuff's kind of nice, right? I was going to give up the multiple vices that many men would have chose. And I did it for the pursuit of entrepreneurship and business, because I realized that this is something I'm heavily pulled towards. The decision did not come easy. I won't lie to you. It wasn't this monumental thing like, yeah, I'm going to do it. It was genuinely months. I filled out, I always say this, like, you can't see it, but like, just imagine like a normal A4 size journal, just like a normal like notepad. I filled out 2 of those on this decision of whether I should go home or not. Weighing up all these decisions, pros and cons, writing about my girlfriend, writing about the people at home and everything. All whilst high. And one of the major reasons that I wrote, like the pro of moving back home, was that I knew I'd stop smoking weed instantly. I don't really know how I knew that, because I didn't know much about self-improvement, but it turned out I was absolutely right. This is pretty much the first day that I'd moved back home to this town that I live in. And it was a magical transformation. Almost immediately, my mental health improved. Because like, I've not showed you the environment that I lived in Manchester. But when you have like trees around you, there's a couple, there's a guy running, it's just so much more friendly. Instantly, I felt so much happier and safer here. Like, my anxiety just kind of lowered down. I realized cities aren't for me. That's a separate point, but it is something I'm quite strongly a believer of. I do believe cities are very unhealthy. And so I moved back to this beautiful town. And this town's almost like a city, and it's still got like a city center. But like where I live, you can see here, it looks beautiful. And there's this grass, there's little kids who like run and cycle their bikes and everything. And this was one of the first days I had ordered these gymnastic rings to essentially meet me at home when I moved there. And I'm setting them up for the first time, and I'm like watching a YouTube tutorial on how to use them. I started restoring peace to my life. You can see how friendly the environment is. People walking their dogs, an old couple walking past. I moved back home and I instantly stopped smoking weed. That was it. It was as simple as that for me. It was all about changing my environment. My environment in Manchester, in the apartment that I lived in with a girlfriend that I no longer related to because me and her had met in our sort of degenerate drug days, and I wanted to now become an entrepreneur and be productive and learn about finance and investing, whereas she just wanted to watch movies. And so imagine you're living with someone who you're so different to, and you've still got to kind of spend time with them. And so the time to spend with her became to just smoke weed. And so it meant that being in that environment, it almost felt like I was required to smoke weed almost every day. And the day that I moved back home to this environment where I lived next to my parents, my brother and my sister, this was a few years ago, I quit smoking immediately. And you know what was interesting? I had smoked for 1.5 years almost every day. I had no withdrawals or desires at all. Previously, when I had stayed in the same environment and I wanted to quit smoking, whether permanently or, for those tolerance breaks, major withdrawals, night sweats, like, the intense dreams coming back up, sweating so much that it was super uncomfortable. None of that when I moved back home. In fact, I was like, there was such a smile, a blissful feeling on my face because now I could finally focus full time on entrepreneurship. I no longer even needed to work any jobs because the idea was I'll move back home. I've got no expenses here. Hopefully my parents can be fine with, me moving back home for free for a little bit. I actually went on government welfare, so I started getting like $200 a month, which I was pretty much just giving to my family so that they could pay for like the food and everything that I was using. And with that, I was able to just develop my business full time. And it felt, you know what? Working on my business, working on something that felt productive, that felt like purposeful, that felt rewarding and challenging, that I had to learn for and I had to grow for. That has been more fun than any high that I've had so far. So this is my message to you, younger Hamza, who's watching this, a young guy who's watching this, who's been struggling to quit smoking weed. The one piece of advice that I can give you, the most important, is changing your environments. This doesn't just mean, for example, throwing away the weed and the lighter and saying, yeah, I'm just never going to smoke anymore, because that didn't work for me. I tried that. I threw away the good bong as well. And then I ended up just buying all that stuff back. What worked for me, which I think might work for you, is changing up your environment significantly. For me, it was I was living in the degen environment away from family and I moved back to family. If you're someone who smokes at home with your family, you might want to consider moving somewhere else, maybe getting some cheap place where you're just kind of alone for a month or 2 months to just kind of reset things, because it's extremely hard to change just one variable. If you've got this like intense addiction at home that you're really trying to get rid of, and that's the only thing that you're trying to change, it's so hard because there's so many reminders. It's all your habits, these cravings are all there. This is a little bit of a side note, but it is relatable to you. I want you to think about how painful it would be to be a husband and your wife passes away. I want you to really realistically imagine, like, genuinely really falling in love with this beautiful, amazing, friendly woman that you actually like look up to. And you have this amazing relationship for 5 years, 10 years, and she ends up dying. Just to give you an example, right? And there you are in your home, and it's deeply lonely. Everything reminds you of her, right? A smart thing to do in that situation, which is what a lot of like widows do, they sell the house and they go because there's just too many memories. It's like it becomes that like this intense full-time job of just getting reminded of what used to be here. And I think that's an dramatic example, but I think quitting weed is the exact same thing. I think if you stay in the environment that you're in, it's almost impossible to change things. One last thing I'll add to that is having something more important and more fun. For me, it was entrepreneurship, it was business, it was self-improvement. That changed my life forever. Below my monitor that I'm recording on, I have a stack of self-improvement books. I started multiple businesses around this time. I was learning to code, I was drop shipping, I was reselling on eBay, I was growing the YouTube channel like you saw with the aesthetic body video. And as soon as I started to really make a little bit of progress in YouTube and it started to, feel rewarding, I only had like 50 or 100 subscribers. That gave me more pleasure in my life, which meant that I didn't really need the pleasure from smoking weed and eating junk food. It gave me purpose and something to be clear-minded for. You see, purpose is a beautiful thing for young men, for all ages of men. Because it gives you something to be clean for. It gives you something to be sober for. You can always tell the level of purpose in a man by how sober he is from vices. You can always see this in yourself. How purposeful you are completely correlates to how sober you are. Because you just don't need anything. You don't want anything to take away your focus from the thing that you love. I don't need to party. I don't need to smoke. I don't need to drink. Those things are genuinely less fun than my day-to-day life. I hope that this can give you a little bit of hope and support in cases you're able to relate to my story at all. I wish you the best of luck.